It was 1974. In the sweltering heat of Bihar, India, a woman stepped off a train. She was feverish, her body blistered with sores. In her wake, hundreds fell ill. Thousands more would follow. Through June, the disease had ravished the northeastern Indian state, killing as many as 20,000. Another 65,000 had survived the disease, but were left with permanently scarred faces or even blinded. 1 in 4 infected would die. This wasn't a new illness. This was smallpox, perhaps the most lethal virus humanity has ever known. A disease that had killed emperors, shattered civilizations, and now threatened to erupt one more time. In the distant past, long before written memory, a silent predator began its journey. Smallpox, one of humanity's most feared diseases, did not spring forth suddenly. Genetic evidence indicates it may have evolved from a rodent virus, perhaps carried by African gerbils, over 10,000 years ago. From this ancient ancestor, 2 distinct lineages would eventually emerge. One, variola major, deadly and relentless, crept out of Asia about 1,000 years ago. The other, a milder form known as alastrim, appeared in the Americas and West Africa, diverging from its ancestor in the past few thousand years. Other genetic evidence suggests smallpox split from its rodent cousin, the tetrapox virus, in the more recent past. Though genetic evidence cannot pinpoint the exact origin of smallpox, we can look for additional clues in the archaeological record. One such clue comes from a royal corpse buried beneath the sands of Egypt. In the Valley of the Kings, archaeologists uncovered the tomb of Pharaoh Ramesses V, who died around 1150 BCE. His mummy was unusually well preserved, but what caught researchers' attention wasn't the linen wrappings or regal burial mask. It was his face. Upon close examination, scientists observed a pattern of pockmarks on his skin, particularly clustered around the cheeks, chin, and shoulders. The lesions bore an eerie resemblance to the scars left by smallpox, offering the first tangible evidence that this disease, so often woven into myth and speculation, had already entered human history more than 3,000 years ago. If correct, this would place smallpox squarely in the ancient world, haunting the courts of kings and pharaohs long before it reached medieval Europe or the New World. In the 2nd century of the Common Era, at the height of Rome's imperial grandeur, an invisible force began to spread. Not an army, nor a rebellion, but a plague. Roman legions returned from the eastern frontiers, not in triumph, but in silence. Among their ranks, the first whisper of a disease the empire had never known. The symptoms are unmistakable: high fever, fatigue. Then, the rash, deep, blistering pustules that cover the body, burst and scab over in waves. This, many believe, was the first great visitation of smallpox upon the Western world. The disease moves fast, from soldier to slave, merchant to senator. In cities choked with crowds and trade, it burns like fire in dry grass. Within just a few years, millions are dead. Even emperors are not spared. Lucius Verus falls, and his co-ruler, Marcus Aurelius, philosopher king and stoic sage, grieves amid the stench of pyres and the moans of the dying. The plague of Antoninus, as it would come to be known, does more than claim lives. It weakens armies, shatters morale, and perhaps begins the long unraveling of Rome's golden age. The year is 735 CE. A ship arrives in the southern province of Kyushu, Japan, its crew weary and unknowingly marked. Within weeks, the symptoms appear: fever, chills, and then the telltale rash, deep, blistering, and relentless. Smallpox had come to Japan. The disease moved with terrifying speed. From village to palace, from farmer to emperor, it showed no distinction. By 737, nearly 1/3 of the population had perished. Entire families were erased. Crops withered in untended fields. The government faltered, And amid the ash of suffering, the people turned to the divine, erecting temples, casting prayers, and forging statues in the hope of salvation. It is said that from this darkness rose the great Buddha of Nara, a monument not just of faith, but of mourning. A nation, scarred and humbled, carved its resilience in bronze. As the centuries rolled on, smallpox did not rest. In India, smallpox had already taken root. By the 8th century, it was not merely feared, it was worshipped. The goddess Shitala was invoked in crowded temples, her devotees offering cool water and flowers in the desperate hope of mercy. Here, the disease became both a terror and a deity. In China, the empire's scholars recorded its symptoms with clinical precision. It struck emperors, peasants, and monks alike. Across the Islamic world, smallpox spread along the great trade routes, the Silk Road, the Hajj caravans, the ports of the Red Sea. Persian and Arab physicians like Al-Razi studied it closely, distinguishing it from measles and laying the foundations of modern epidemiology. In the golden cities of the Byzantine Empire, it found crowded streets and sanctuaries filled with refugees. And as the Crusaders marched east, they carried it with them, bringing not just war, but pestilence. Even in the far reaches of Africa, from West African kingdoms to Swahili coastal towns, smallpox embedded itself, traveling on caravans and dhows, marking the faces of kings and commoners alike. By the time the sails of European ships reached the horizon of the Americas, smallpox had already circled much of the known world. It had become not just a disease, but a shadow woven into the very fabric of civilization. In the year 1492, European sails first breached the horizon of the Americas, and with them came more than ambition, trade, or conquest. They brought something unseen, something uninvited, a single breath, a single touch. That's all it took. The virus, variola major, smallpox, had crossed the Atlantic. To the peoples of the New World, it was a terror without a name. No immunity, no memory, no defense. Within weeks of exposure, entire villages fell silent. Within years, civilizations crumbled. Among the Aztec, Inca, Maya, and countless others, it spread faster than armies could march. In some regions, up to 90% of the population perished, not by sword or spear, but by fever, pustule, and breath. Great cities emptied, temples stood abandoned. Oral histories vanished with the last breath of their storytellers. And for the Europeans, it was seen not as tragedy, but as divine providence, a clearing of the land. But make no mistake, this was not just a moment in conquest, it was one of the deadliest biological events in human history. A single virus, accidentally carried in the folds of cloth and skin, reshaped entire continents. It is among the smallest of things, not even truly alive, just a thread of genetic code, wrapped in a protein shell. And yet, this tiny intruder, variola major, has reshaped the destiny of our species. It is smallpox. Once inhaled, it slips past the body's defenses, entering through the lungs and spreading silently through the bloodstream. Days pass. The host feels nothing. But deep within, the virus is at work, hijacking cells, forcing them to produce copies of itself. And then the symptoms come. Fever, aches, delirium. Then the skin erupts in pustules, first on the tongue and mouth, then across the body. These lesions blister, burst, and scab, leaving behind scars or silence. Smallpox does not discriminate. It struck pharaohs and peasants, emperors and children. Entire cities fell. Entire continents cried out. And yet, even in ancient times, humans fought back. In China, as early as the 10th century, healers ground scabs into fine powder, blowing them into the nostrils of the healthy. Risky, yes, but many who survived this mild exposure gained protection. In the Ottoman Empire, the practice spread through the hands of village women who carefully scratched a small amount of pus from a mild case into the arm of the uninfected. This was variolation. It was dangerous. Some still died, but many lived. And in 1796, a country doctor in England, Edward Jenner, noticed something remarkable. Milkmaids who had suffered the far milder cowpox never seemed to catch smallpox. He tested his theory, infecting a boy with cowpox and then exposing him to smallpox. Fortunately for the boy, and for us, the boy lived. And thus, the first true vaccine was born, from the Latin vacca, for cow, a humble creature shielding us from a ruthless predator. Still, the disease raged on, indifferent, relentless. By the 20th century, smallpox had become one of the deadliest forces humanity had ever faced. In the 20th century alone, it is estimated to have claimed the lives of at least 50 million people, and possibly as many as 300 million, more than all the wars of that era combined. Then, in 1967, the World Health Organization declared a bold and unprecedented campaign, a global war against an invisible enemy. Armed not with bullets, but with vials, maps, and jet injectors, they launched what would become one of the most ambitious public health efforts in history. Ring vaccination became their weapon of choice, every outbreak traced, every contact vaccinated. The virus, once rampant, found itself encircled, isolated step by step, village by village, case by case, needle by needle. And still, smallpox fought back. In the Indian state of Bihar, the virus surged with terrifying force, over 188,000 people infected in a single year. Entire villages were gripped by fear, their isolation no defense against the disease. But the response was relentless. Health workers fanned out in all directions, on foot, by bicycle, by boat, tracking cases, vaccinating entire communities within days of an outbreak. Teams slept in tents, crossed floodplains, and navigated war zones. No case could be missed, no contact left unchecked. And it worked. In 1975, the final case in Asia was found and contained, in Bangladesh. 2 years later, in a small town in Somalia, a cook named Ali Mao Marlin became the last known person on Earth to contract smallpox. After thousands of years of suffering, the virus had finally run out of places to hide. In 1980, smallpox became the first human disease ever eradicated. No armies, no hero's sword, just science, persistence, and a vaccine born from a cow. Today, smallpox exists only in freezers, sealed behind biometric locks and steel doors. But its shadow remains, a reminder of what viruses can take and what humanity can overcome. Smallpox rewrote human history, but in the end, we emerged the victors. Assuming, of course, we can trust the guardians of the freezers to keep it that way.